get things moving. At this point, it's the Colusi County Historical Society's 75th anniversary, so we could have just a brief cheer for that. You'll notice the 75 is on the table, and that's what that's celebrating. Just so you know, the class of 75 is having its 50th high school anniversary reunion this year, so I just wanted to throw that in too. We've got some business to attend to. Because in addition to the program, this is the Colusi Historical Society's annual meeting, so we have to elect, for all you members out there, we have to elect the directors and the officers. And so the slate of officers or of directors to be elected are David Ballard, Charles Yerxa, or Leroy Prindle, and what was it? Yeah. Oh, that's gracious. Now, so just those two are up for election. Now we have plenty of other seats on the board, namely at this point 4. So if there's anybody out there that wants to go ahead and raise their hand, we can vote on you too. Okay. But if you don't and you decide you want to do it tomorrow, you can contact any of us on the website at our email address, or next week, or next month.
Mr. Chairman, I make the motion to retain the same board.
Okay, thank you, Jared. Appreciate that. And but we're just electing. We've only got 2 on the slate today: David Ballard and Leroy Prindle, and that's all, right? Yeah. So if you could all in favor of that slate, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say no. And the slate is re-elected unanimously. I'd also at this point like to have all the directors that create all this excitement to stand up, to state their name, to state where they're from, and so could I have all the directors in the room stand up, please? Okay. Let's start from the front. Jim
Lambert from Willows. I'm the society treasurer.
Okay, and Jerry?
Jerry Clark. I'm from Willows. I'm one of the directors.
Okay. Next in line. Can't really see out there. Dave? Yeah.
I'm David Ballard. I'm from the Colusi County Society of Town of Carmichael.
And Ben?
Hughes from Red Bluff. And Ben.
Charles?
Charles Vice President, Chico.
And Allison?
Allison Yerxa from
And Jean?
Gene Russell. Autumn.
Leroy?
In the city, formerly of Princeton.
Okay. Patsy.
Nancy Style, Chief outgoing from.
Now, Jean is also the editor of Wagon Wheels, which I think you've all seen, and Anna. Okay, you got to speak up. I can't see.
And I love you about money.
And Jean is hoping to retire. Oh, who else we got? Okay, Bill? No. Bill?
All right, Bill Davis, Orland, and we forgot the flag salute, we do that.
We can do that. Can you lead it, Bill?
Do it next time.
Can you lead it? Go ahead, lead it. Lead it. You lead it. You lead it.
Go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
On your feet. South side. Salute. Pledge.
Thank you, Bill. Any other directors out there that I see? I may have also forgotten to introduce myself. I'm Charles Ricks, the president. Okay, we're still moving along here. This is the first time in a long time we've had this program any place but the Methodist Church in Colusi. So I'm just very pleased to be here in this wonderful venue. And I'd like the director of the museum, Elijah, to just say a few words briefly about the venue.
Hello, for everyone that doesn't know me, my name is Elijah Rodriguez. I'm the director here at the museum. Thank you to everyone for coming. We're so happy to host the Colusi County Historical Society's spring meeting. For those of you who don't know, this is originally the Waylands High School. It was built in 1911 and served classes 12 to 56 until when the school closed and they built a new high school across the street here. And then in 63 it opened as a regional museum. We've been open for 62 years. We reopen in March. We're open every March through October. So come back on March 20th and come see us. And thank you all for coming today and to see Cassie's presentation.
Thank you, Elijah. We actually have a double treat today. Dixie LeGrand has agreed to do, a longtime director here at the museum has agreed to do tours afterwards. And so you can just see her at that point. Dixie, can you just say a couple of brief words about your tour?
I echo Elijah's very enthusiastic. Thank you for all of you coming today, and this Colusi County Historical Society being here. It's just a joy and a privilege. And yes, I'm a local gal who would be more than honored to take you on tour of all the museums upstairs and downstairs. So after we've been talking, after the question and answer period, I will start in the foyer, which we've been to. And the comments, for all who did wonderful, quick summary, start with, and I will elaborate on that. And I will be going on this side, crossing the auditorium, the other side, and then downstairs, and then downstairs, from which you could leave then. But if you can stay a little bit longer, we have also our welcome services about
Thank you, Dixie. And that is after the program for anybody who wants to join Dixie's tours. Scott Aaron's asked me to just say a few brief words about membership in the Colusi County Historical Society, and I highly recommend it. We have 3 programs a year like this in 3 successful counties, and then of course the award-winning wagon wheels that comes out twice a year. So with that, I think that's pretty much finished by scripts. I would like to.
Charles?
Yes. Did I forget something?
Yes.
Yes. Well, I'm not quite there actually yet, but I would like to thank the caterer, Chris Swagum. I think it's really been extraordinary this couple of years. But unless I've forgotten something, Elizabeth, I think I'm done with now the introduction, and I would like to, at this point, introduce our speaker. Cassie Ferraiuolo graduated as a distinguished student from Chico State with a BA in 2017. Most of our speakers graduated in 1970, but and a master's degree in history in 2022. In the meantime, she got a teaching credential there in 2018. She was awarded the Clarence McIntosh William Hutchinson, who actually was a former Hutchinson, old Hunt, was a former speaker at Colusi Historical Society, more than once, I think. Graduate Fellowship Award, which funded her research, allowing her access to various archives across the country. Ferraiuolo is in her 7th year as a middle school history teacher and is a prospective PhD student at UC Davis. So with that, I will hand it over to Cassie Ferraiuolo.
Good afternoon. So, have you guys ever heard of imposter syndrome? Has anybody heard of that? It's when you kind of wonder, like, how did I end up in this place, and am I supposed to be here? So, I have to tell you, as a longtime history student, this is not normally what conferences look like. Usually there's maybe 14 people, maybe, in a small little room. So to see like this many people in one room, it's a little bit intimidating. However, I hope nobody objects to this presentation. Okay. So since I'm looking at this from such an angle, I actually have printed my slides so I can read if I need to. The first thing I'd like to say is my name is Cassie Ferraiuolo, and thank you to everybody for showing up here. The directors, the Historical Society, my family, and then my dear students over here who volunteered to be here tonight. So if we could give one more applause to everybody that helped today. Okay, so let's start out. I'd like a show of hands. Before hearing about my research, did anybody know about Little Italy, Colusi?
Thank you very much.
Yes, okay. That's great. So I want to say this is a large story. It was very difficult for me to decide what to include, not only in my thesis, but also in this presentation. So I'm definitely leaving things out, and I'm going to do my best to give you at least something that I think you might be interested in. But I encourage you, if you'd like more details on certain things, to read my thesis. It's called Little Italy, Colusi, and it comes up, it's free online. It comes up right away if you Google that. So here we have a picture of, this is the region of Calabria, which is where most of our Italian people are from, and I've paired it with an old map of Colusi. So the region we are most familiar with, Little Italy, Colusa, this is a rough estimate, but in general, it's northern border is Fremont, and then we have the Teal is 6th Street, and then we have Tuttle Lane as well. I don't know if this has a pointer on it. But then also we have Goads Extension, which is kind of by where the hospital is now. So there's a lot of Italians living there too. Although I don't think anything remains there anymore. And then of course we had a little pocket of Italians over by Market Street, which we're going to talk about in just a moment. Oh, sorry, there we go. This way, okay. All right, so I want to give you a note on my research because this was not an easy task. So I took a few pictures here during my time. We have on the far left, this is the reading room downstairs here at the museum. And these, I put my hand by the book because they're giant. You have to use your thighs if you're going to lift them up. So it's actually physically and mentally a challenge. Then the middle picture, this is in New York. So I was able to, through my fellowship, get paid a paid trip to Minnesota and New York for research. And in New York, they have what's called the Tenement Museum, where they have restored actual apartments from immigrants, and you can choose from which one you'd like to see. So this one I looked at was a 1920s Italian family in New York, and it was really cool. For example, where the kitchen sink was also, like the kitchen counter was actually a bathtub. If you take off the top, it's a bathtub, because they had communal bathing facilities, which I don't know if you've been to New York, but there's a lot of people there, and I don't know that you really want to share. So they were resourceful. And on the right, this is at the Minnesota Historical Society. I spent a very long time there, and my mom, she was my assistant. But I looked at every single microfilm roll that existed in the time period that we were studying and looking at. It was a lot of work. And at the very top in the far right corner, I just want to point out that this is not how you spell Ferraiuolo. So it's Ferraiuolo. And I'm putting this here because it wasn't like I could just easily put in a name and find an answer. I had to purposely misspell multiple names. And even words you think would be spelled correctly are spelled incorrectly, and also these old documents are in calligraphy, which modern computers, they're just not that good at reading. Okay, so one of my concerns about this presentation is having people think that I'm over-representing the Ferraiuolo family, but I did compile some data here. If you would like to look at how exactly I came up with this data, you're welcome to look at my thesis where I explain it all. But here is from 1910 to basically 1939, newspaper mentions by last name, and this is including misspelling the name in 5 different ways of each of them. So you can see we have the Ferraiuolo name is very prominent, and it drops off, just before the 30s. And then we have, next is Lou Casey. This one just keeps on going up almost into the 1960s, actually. We have Del Papa. I put him on here because although he's not mentioned very much in the newspapers, he's very important. And I just want to kind of show you this. Like Del Papa, we're going to talk about him in a little bit. So he was an important figure in Colusa, like a political figure. And yet he's not quite mentioned in the newspapers in the way that the Ferraiuolo family is. It's almost like they talked about the Ferraiuolo family in like a tabloid sort of manner. And then we have Giragolo, which was Del Papa's partner, his first agricultural partner in America, and he's not mentioned very much today. Okay. All right, so in general, there are 3 ways that Italians made it to Colusa. There's definitely more than this though. I tried to pick the 3 most prominent. So we have going from Italy to the port of Louisiana and then finding their way over to Colusa. We have the earliest Italian immigrants came all the way around Cape Horn through Drake's Passage and up to San Francisco, the port in San Francisco. Drake's Passage is one of the most dangerous places you could ever travel on the ocean. There's a lot of sunken ships there. So they're literally people spending their last dime, leaving everything they know behind, and they're taking not only this journey that can take months, but they're also risking their life. And then finally, we have the one most people are familiar with, which is where the Italians would go to New York, up to Minnesota, and back, and then over here, making it to Colusi. I'm sure a lot of you have relatives from Minnesota. I'm just gonna guess. Okay. I have to make sure that I breathe and talk slowly, because I talk quickly. No. All right, so when were Italians first mentioned in newspapers? So this is the earliest mention I could find. It's from 1865, and it's a little bit controversial. So some of you might already know this, but Colusi, Sutter, and Yuba counties voted against the abolition of slavery. So who's to blame for that, right? So there's some people, they decided the scapegoats would be Italians and Native Americans. And I'm just gonna read you a little quote from this newspaper. It's kind of hard to see. "It is not the voice of the white men of the district. Nobody but those horrid Italians and Indians in Colusi County could think of sustaining such a compact." And they're talking about slavery. So my question is, why were there actually enough Italians in Colusi in 1865 to sway a political election about the most controversial topic in American history? I don't know. You tell me. Okay. So looking at the census reports, so if just looking at, let's see, 1860, it's saying there are 0 Italians in Colusi. 1870, there's 1, a Mr. Nicholas. If there's only 1, according to the census, this doesn't make any sense. This has to be incorrect, because if there's 1 guy, which actually this guy was named Crazy Joe, he has a whole story that I can't tell you about, but if Crazy Joe, he's not capable of swaying an entire county's vote. So I think we really can't rely on the census. They can give us kind of like clues and puzzle pieces, but it's not everything. So keep that in mind. And then we have 1880, there's a family of 5.
That's a right report on that.
What did you say? Sorry? Oh, okay. Okay. 1890, for some reason, the United States decided to house most of the census reports in one building, and it happened to be a fire that year and destroyed most all of them. And it also happened to be the year that the United States Census had the most details of all time. So we're missing a lot. But then it says by 1900 there's only 2, which is also impossible because there's records of citizenship papers and archives before that. Okay. So I'm showing you this because I want you guys to know that it took a lot of reading between the lines and putting a bunch of pieces together to try to make a story that was cohesive. It's a really broken story, but I didn't want to lose it. Okay, so in general, there are 3 waves of migration we're going to talk about. We have the Port of San Francisco, River Steamboat, and the New York to Minnesota, which most of you are familiar with. Okay, so one thing we have to say is there is a north-south divide in Italy. It still exists today, but it was much worse in the early 1900s, mid-1800s to early 1900s. So basically we have an industrial north that's all about business and industry and like new inventions and things like that. And then we have the south, which is impoverished, poverty-paid laborers of agriculture. So it's really actually kind of mirrors in a way like the United States, where we have the industrial north and the agrarian south. And instead of slaves, of course, we have people being exploited and getting paid poverty level wages in the south of Italy. So there was a lot of discrimination against these 2 groups. Okay, however, we have the 2 leading men, I would say, of the Italian community, bringing them together. We have Giovanni, John Del Papa, and Francesco Frank Ferraiuolo. There's a lot of Frank Ferraiuolos, but this is the first one. And John Del Papa, he is from Liguria, in a town called Genova, which is up in the north. It's like, it's kind of just where it curves on the left side of the the map. And then Frank is from the south. So here we have these two unlikely friends that, traditionally they should not like each other, but they're gonna become like good friends. I would say probably close to family. And I think it kind of represents how the Italian community of Colusa was really strong and tight knit, despite maybe being a little bit different. I also added here some other early settlers like Frank D'Regolo and Angelo Altamori, also known as Frank Ward. These guys I'd say are like the pillars of the park. I don't know. Okay, so I got this picture. I didn't take it. I wasn't there actually in 1900. But this is the port of San Francisco around 1900, and this is what these early settlers would be arriving to. And I think it's kind of interesting to see how many sailboats are still out there, even though we have, the steamboat, coming around the corner. So just imagine docking in this busy city port with just the clothes on your back, and you're hoping you're going to make it.
I'm almost done.
Okay, so we have the second wave, which is the river steamboat, and I think I'll read this to you. I'm not sure how well you guys can see this. I think this story is really told through the newspaper articles, so I'll try to read a lot of them to you, and I hope that is okay with you. Italian advance guard arrived. 10 men, the advance guard of an Italian colony, which is to be established on the land of the Moulton Irrigated Land Company, with a complete farming equipment consisting of 26 head of horses, wagons, plows, and other farm implements, arrived here this morning from San Francisco on the steamer Colusa. As soon as their outfit was unloaded off the boat, they loaded the wagons and started their new home, which will be near East Lake, 6 miles east of the Moulton Ranch Land Company's home, north of Colusa. E. George is head of the party that arrived today, and they have rented about 1,000 acres for farming land, which will be planted to grain, beans, and vegetables. When land has been tilled and houses built, the rest of the colonists will come. I have tried so hard to find out who this E. George guy is. If anybody knows, tell me afterwards, please. But I also know that Del Papa, he was renting like hundreds of acres in the Moulton Ranch area, so I have a feeling there's some relation here. Oh, I want to go back really quickly and say, in 1889, that is when Del Papa submitted his papers to become a citizen in Colusa, and in 1900 is when Frank Ferraiuolo did. So they were already there before the steamboat arrived in 1911. And here's a picture of it. I was really happy to find a picture of this. Okay. So we have our third wave, which is going from New York to Minnesota. And here's this flyer is on Ellis Island. I got a picture of it myself, but this one is much better than mine, so I took this off the internet. But it says the Connigan Louise. This is a ship that a lot of Italians are coming to America on. And I know for sure I was able to find the Vito and Ferraiuolo family on the same ship Manifest, which is really cool to see because we know those names around here. And then here's a picture of that ship, of that steamer. Okay, so what happened when these Italians, and other immigrants too, of course, but we're talking about Italian Americans today. So most of the Italians on the ship are escaping poverty, agricultural wages with like exploitative landlords who are merciless. Okay, there's a lot of fighting, they want a better life. And so it's already difficult for them in the South, so they're gonna try their chance in America. They hear great things about it, they want something better. So as soon as they land on the dock, they are greeted by tons of people saying, come work for us, come work on the railroad, come work in the mines. They're saying there's land to be had, come on the train this way. And they're basically bombarded with all of these opportunities. And we have to remember that a lot of them, again, are arriving with nothing but the clothes on their back and maybe a couple pieces of money. They weren't traveling as a whole family. They would send a few people, usually maybe one person at a time. So what those people saw, which we call them man catchers or labor catchers, they saw a way to exploit these newcomers who are trying to find a better life. And so this is like a political cartoon of all these Italian people arriving. It says, Italian cheap labor. And you can see they're having pickaxes and shovels, like, you know, they're ready to be exploited on the Iron Range. Okay. So here we have a picture of Francesco Nicoletti. He's on the far left with his brothers. This is on the Iron Range. I'm not sure what they're mining for here, but also this is when I looked at all of those microfilm rolls. These are the names that came up, and this does not mean there's not other people that were present. This is just what happened to be on that microfilm. So I'm going to take a minute, you guys, and look at those names for a second, see if you recognize any of them. And a lot of names also are misspelled, or they have multiple spellings, so I try to include them all. I think it would be, you know, just for the point of research, and if anybody out there has a family up here and you see the names spelled differently, if you want to do research, you should purposely try to find some other spellings too. Okay. All right, so on the Iron Range, a lot of people at times were recruited by these man catchers to Minnesota's Iron Range, where they faced similarly difficult circumstances as in the agrarian south of Italy, which the Italians are not going to stand for that, right? They didn't cross the Atlantic Ocean or go around Cape Horn to be treated the same way. That's not the point. So here we have 1907. Here's a picture of some, I believe they're coal miners, and there's a guy named Teofilo Petriella, and he is the strike leader in Minnesota. I want to talk to you guys about this more, but I'm going to kind of make it short just so we can move on with the story. But okay, so the Italians would call the foremen padroni, which means masters. And these guys often controlled the wages, contracts, and food supply of the immigrants and could keep workers on the job for weeks or months beyond their contracts. Some padroni built vast labor empires, keeping thousands of workers confined in locked camps behind barbed wire fences patrolled by armed guards. And there's more to it than that. So if you're interested, there's a book. It's called Flames of Discontent by Gary Kahneman. It's a very great book. I cite it in my thesis. I highly recommend it. Anyway, so this guy is basically going to be organizing all the operations for protest for the mistreatment of Italians in mining camps. But in one of the ways that he organizes these, you know, this basically this fight back is through Italian grocery stores. So we have here, on the right, this is the Vito family, Frank Vito's grocery store in Minnesota, which I got to visit in person. So Frank Vito he's on the far left here. He was the patriarch of the family, and he was not only a miner, but he also owned a grocery store. So while there's nothing, like, I have no definitive proof that he was involved in the strike, I find it highly likely, considering his situation, that he probably was. And I wish we can go back in time and ask him about it, because I bet he had some stories. And thank you so much to the Vito family, of course, for the pictures. And all of you guys who helped me. Here's another picture. I just thought you guys might want to see it. I believe this picture was taken in Colusi. This is the Vito family, and the girl in the back on the right is Marietta Ferraiuolo. I think it's just kind of cool to show, like, we've Italian communities been together since day one, pretty much. Are you guys doing okay out there? Yes? Okay. Okay. So the Masabi, the Iron Range strike in Minnesota, again, we're kind of like skipping over it a little bit, and I apologize for that. It's just a lot. That's a whole another presentation. But in 1909, there's a similar thing going on in McLeod. And I actually just recently found these pictures like less than a week ago, so I'm really excited about them. American loggers at McLeod joined striking Italians, and serious trouble now expected. Protesting Italians at the McLeod River Company headquarters caused its outpost in Colusi, Chico, Woodland to be under arms as communities across the area feared a greater, more organized strike. So this like fervent, this spirit of revolt and we're not settling for mistreatment is like, we see it in Minnesota, we see it in McLeod. There's enough Italians in Colusa that are working at their outposts to cause people in the community to be nervous about it. We have this guy, J.H. Wheel. I think he just kind of looks like he's not a very nice guy. He didn't care. Unfortunately, the strike in McLeod, there was no win for it. But I would say, if anything, it kind of like united the Italians together and it like preserved this spirit, like we're not going to settle for being mistreated. So, unfortunately though, all he did was the Italians left and he hired some new immigrant group because again, they're like expendable to the people. Okay. So we have our third wave, which involves Gennaro, January Cairo in 1922. So Gennaio means January in Italian, so I feel like Gennaro it just naturally became his nickname. So we see in 1900 he declares his intent to become a citizen in Minnesota, and then somewhere between then and 1917 he arrives in Colusa and he's mentioned in his first newspapers. So on the right, I just put some clips there to say, like, in April 1917, he's buying some property. May, he's buying more property. You can see Frank Ferraiuolo is mentioned in that same newspaper. It's unrelated to his purchase, but I just thought it was cool to see these two names together. And then December 19, January Cairo is buying even more land. Okay, so this, thank you to Fred and Vicki for these photographs also. So 1922, big colony of Italians coming to settle here. January Cairo, he's the one with the large mustache sitting down looking and Solon. And then Louis Cairo is on the far right. I'm so sorry. I know you guys recognize him. Okay, January Cairo is turning out to be a regular colonizer. He announced today that 50 or more new settlers will arrive in Colusa within a short time to make their homes. They're going to settle down right in Colusa. January settled down here and has made it pay. His friends have heard of his success. Now they are coming. Some will come from Minnesota, some from Washington. All are Italians. Whether they will buy farms or go into business in town has not yet been learned. The chances are, however, it was said, that any farmer with some alfalfa land will have a hard time keeping them from leasing it or buying it for a dairy ranch. And here's another interesting picture here. Of course, January is the one with the big mustache and the white hat in the back. And when we look at citizenship papers, we see a lot of sponsors with Cairo, Del Papa, Ferraiuolo, and Lucchese. They're like the ones like I see most often, signing to help people come over here. And again, I want to remind you guys, I'm only showing you the tiniest bit of what I am able to. Okay, there's a lot more information that I found. Okay. Italian farmers of Colusa originated not by birthright, but from the hardships of the old world. So we're talking, again, we have these people, they're leaving the exploitative southern agrarian south of Italy. They've been mistreated, they've been fighting back, they've been doing everything they can. They're trying to get a better life for themselves, so they're coming over here in America. But guess what? They are great at this. They're good at agriculture. They know how to grow from the land. And so they're going to, for centuries, for hundreds and hundreds of years, these people have been involved in farming. And so they're going to bring those skills here to California, which I would say is one of the most fertile places on earth. And that's kind of going to be what at one point was like their prison is going to become their savior. Right? Okay, so there's a ton of stuff here. I might kind of swing through this a little bit quickly, just again to move on. But there's a few names of Italian gardens that we read about in the newspapers. We have the Italian Gardens of Colusa, the Colusa Gardens, Del Papa and Ferraiuolo, and the Del Papa Groves. And we have all throughout all kinds, like decades of newspaper clippings like this. Produce display at pavilion, a gratifying success. Large crowds visit the hall. Many credible exhibits placed and show wonderful resources of county. Del Papa and Ferraiuolo come next with representatives of the Colusi garden. Eggplants, peppers, pie plants, melons, and tomatoes. In fact, all that a first-class vegetable garden produces is here as an indication of those prolific acres just outside our city's haunts. I just think it's kind of a cool, like, be proud to be from Colusi. We've got 1904, a new and great industry for the Sacramento Valley. It's this matting straw that was like used in making the floor. And Del Papa brings this in. What makes it special is it can grow almost any length you need. So you can like kind of customize your orders for what kind of construction project you're doing. But we have Editor Green endorses the California tool that Del Papa brings in, and this Editor Green is Will S. Green, the pioneer of Colusi. His house is a historic landmark next to the police station in Colusi. So like that's a very important guide. He's like recognizing Del Papa and this new industry he's gonna bring. Then we have Joe Lucchese olive oil journey. In 1910, it says, I'm just going to show you basically how he has risen to fame very quickly. So in 1910, the newspaper says, Joe Lucchese, the Italian, is determined to have an olive oil industry here. Then we have 1922, small olive oil plant is started. Colusi has an olive oil industry yet. It is small yet, to be sure, but just as certain as 2 and 2 make 7 or 8, it is growing and will yet become a real industry. And if anybody after the show can explain to me how 2 and 2 make 7 or 8, I've been thinking about that. I'm not sure. And it says, a small plant, hardly worth mentioning? Not at all. Then we've got 1924, Colusi olive is 4 inches around. June 1926, Colusi olive oil brings good prices. Joe Lucchese and Son have planned to double their olive oil output next year. Their pure olive oil is in demand now in San Francisco. Lucchese began the olive oil business by gathering olives in a wheelbarrow. San Francisco buyers are paying a higher price for Colusi oil than other competing brands and declare it is superior in quality. And we've got August 1927, we have this 1,400 gallons of olive oil made here in a year, wins gold prize at the fair. It's not only selling olive oil, he's also selling actual olives too. And then what he does after, so when he presses the olive, it makes these like olive cakes, and he's using them in his furnace, and it's saving him a ton of money on gas, I guess. But maybe we could try it. Okay, 1928, Colusi olive oil plant had a big year. Joe Lucchese, Colusi's only olive oil manufacturer, plans to make over 1,000 gallons this year. It's of superior quality. Then we have 1928, Lucchese gets silver medal. Denotes superiority in olive oil. 1930, Colusi has fine olive oil plant with Cassie factory to produce 2,000 gallons or more. It is like exponentially, it is increasing. He's doing such a good job. And then here it says, Colusi proud of Lucchese to make 2,000 gallons. Some of the oil goes to Chicago, New York, just about everywhere, and Lucchese gets plenty of repeat orders. This year, Lucchese expects to make 2,000 gallons or more, for the factory is running every hour of the day and plenty of hours at night. So I think that's so cool that we have this little Colusi is getting New York buyers. Okay, so we're going to move on from Lucchese, only because I stop at 1930, that's where my thesis ends, but his story continues. I talked to his grandson, I'm not sure his name is Leon Lucchese, and he said that after World War II, the olive oil market was like flooded with olive oil and kind of made it difficult to sustain the business. But if anybody has an old Lucchese olive oil bottle, I would really love it. Okay, so I want to ask you guys for help with something. There's this mystery that's been plaguing my family. I'm going to read it to you, and if you have any information about this, please let me know. We've been searching the Catholic cemetery trying to find these graves, and they are not there, and there's no information. It says, Frank Ward, age 63 years, a native of Calabria, Italy, but a resident of the United States since attaining his majority, And for more than 20 years, one of Colusa's most highly respected gardeners died suddenly this morning about 6:30 o'clock in his home in Goats Extension of heart disease. Besides the aged widow, he is survived by a daughter, Miss Frank Ferraiuolo of Colusa. The funeral will take place Saturday morning from Our Lady of Lourdes Catholic Church, following in the Colusa Catholic Cemetery, where the body will be placed by loving hands beside the remains of a daughter, Mrs. Rosa Ferraiuolo, who passed into the great beyond a number of years ago. And this is 1917. Can't find any of them. Also, Frank Ward, his actual name is Angelo Altomori. Everyone in the family changed their name to Ward, and I don't know why, and I want to find their graves. So please help me if you can. And then I just put this picture in here of my great-grandpa Louis Ferraiuolo on the right, and I'm not sure, I don't remember who was on the left. I apologize. But they're farming something, and it's a cool picture, so I'm glad you want to see. Okay, so now we're going to talk about prohibition, which, as you guys know, is when it was illegal to make or consume alcohol. So we're going to go back a little bit farther than that, though, just really quickly. So this is from a San Francisco newspaper in 1885. It says a number of Italians are considering to locate a colony favorable for the extensive cultivation of grapes and mulberry trees. Colusa County seems to be the preference of the majority. So this is a pretty early account. It's kind of like saying these Italians are eyeing Colusa because of this wine, and how is that going to work out for them during Prohibition? Okay, so if you would like to see the, again, the information on how I got this data, you're welcome to look at my thesis where I explain it, but I will not bore you with that right now. So I took, this is newspaper articles on prohibition violations by race, ethnicity, nationality. You can see Italian is by far the highest identified group of people that are being punished here. And the undetermined, this is where they didn't say a name, or, it's like you can't tell what kind of nationality these people had. So it's likely there's even more Italians in that group, putting Italians at, by far, the biggest breakers of this prohibition. Oh, and it says September 20th, 1921, head of family cannot make 200 gallons of wine. Misconception prevalent, likely to get some good folks in trouble, what the law really is. I just want to say, I'm pretty sure they knew what the law was, right? There is a general belief around Colusa that the head of a family under the federal prohibition law has the legal right to make 200 gallons of wine from fruit juices, and it is declared that numerous persons are going in strong to the alleged right. The odor of grapes turned into alcohol is noticeable, people say, in many parts of town and county. So one of the first times we see somebody getting in trouble, it says Italian moonshine are caught still and booze confiscated. So there's this interaction with these two Italian guys. Basically, one is just purchasing a bottle of alcohol from the other, and it says house near Sycamore raided 50 gallons of raisin brandy, which is grappa, and 50 of wine brought in raid made under the Wiley law. So their bail is set at $500, which is about $8,000 to $9,000 today. And who's going to pay that bail? Well, let's see, because I happen to know. So Del Papa and Frank Ferraiuolo are the ones who furnished the bail for these two Italian guys. However, they are seen furnishing the bail for a lot of Italian people getting put in jail for violating prohibition. I want to remind you guys, this is John Del Papa. He's a leading figure in Colusa's history. He's very respected. He's a leader in the community. He's even mentioned in this 1918 book as being such. Okay, so he's known. It's I don't know, just think about that. And then of course we have Francesco Frank Ferraiuolo. And why I love this picture so much is because we have this Prohibition era picture, Frank Ferraiuolo with the pike. We have his grandson in front of him here, and I'm not sure if the guy is on the right. But if you can't tell, they're standing in front of a vineyard, basically. I'd say there's some grapes thrown behind him, and there's a bottle of wine in his friend's hand. It's there's no trying to hide it. We're yeah. there's no misconception about the 200 gallons of wine. Okay, so at Frank Ferraiuolo's house, there would be lavish parties. If you're curious to read one in detail, I have in the Colusi room with my Italian exhibit, I printed one of them describing the parties. There's live music, there's mini courses, there's all kinds of pasta and desserts, and there's dancing and everything you could possibly imagine. Like one of the most, I'm sure, amazing sights anybody could see. But who's at these parties, right? Where it says, they said this was an innocuous party, but it says red wine sparkling with the sunshine of sunny California and white wine aglow with California moonshine. These were sampled and pronounced excellent. So they're drinking during Prohibition. But here are some of the guests at the party. We have the mayor. We have Mayor Oscar Robinson, LL Hickok, Phil B. Arnold, trustee. We have J.J. O'Rourke, former city trustee. Denefeld, the town marshal. Thomas Roach, special officer. Tony Cairo, John Papa, Frank Alves, Frank Duego, and of course Frank Duego and Ferraiuolo family. They're not trying to hide it, right? They're like publicly saying, look, we had this beautiful party and we've been drinking and we know it's against the law and we're gonna do it. So here's another case just to show you how like blatant, and I would say nearly, I'd say kind of tabloid like the newspapers and Colusi were getting. So Spanish stew for birthday dinner, I just want to pause and say that my dad still makes this stew, but they call it tamale stew. I think somewhere in the generations they lost the title. But this was Frank Ferraiuolo made this stew for the town marshal's birthday. The town marshal is kind of like the chief of police, I think. It says, Ferraiuolo rolled up in his 6-cylinder rough and ready and presented to the marshal with a glorious chicken stew, Spanish style, and 4 bottles of fine, but that would be telling too much. Anyway, Jack is a year older today than he was Monday, but the memory of that stew and the 4 other items serves to submerge the poignancy of grief, which otherwise would attend the fact when we're called to mind. So, it's again super, it's like, are they trying to get caught? Do they want somebody to come and like arrest them? But to have the town marshal, the one who's supposed to be enforcing this law, is like part of it, you know? Okay, however, I think they went a little too far because there's some, I'll just read it to you. And you guys, I don't cuss, so I'm not gonna say that Jack word there, but I know that it's a raisin brandy grappa, okay? So hunt on March 6, 1923, this is at the Del Papa Ranch, hunt big cache of grappa, find barrel marks. To locate a large amount of liquor said to be hidden west of town, Sheriff Creighton Constable Sweetland, Constable Danley, and Marshal Topman Saturday searched a barn on the land farm by John Del Papa near the Junction Road. The officers searched thoroughly and even dug in the dirt floor of the barn. They declared they found a gallon jug of grappa brandy and found marks where large barrels had been buried. The main liquor stock, though, had been moved, it was said. So they're kind of getting close, right? They've been very obviously drinking, and now people are kind of like paying attention and getting. I mean, I think the fact they went after Del Papa, a leading figure in the society, kind of is going to make the community a little bit shocked, and maybe they should tone it down. Then we have on May 19th, 1923, Frank Ferraiuolo and Cherolani were arrested after the Herald went to press Thursday afternoon on the charge that they had 320 gallons of wine in their possession. So they said you couldn't have 200 gallons, but 325 is probably fine, right? So again, we have the Herald, the same newspaper that was like making money off of selling these stories about the parties becomes the same people that are kind of like going to crack down on the law. So basically after this, the stories of these grand parties, they simmer down. There's not really talk about alcohol anymore. I think this kind of shook people up because again, we're looking at leading members of the community and they're just not able to be so blatant. Okay. So I'm gonna move to the last section of my presentation, which is about the mafia. And I want to tell you, I really try, I'm very concerned about people thinking I'm trying to sensationalize something more, So I'm gonna just try to show you what I have and you can tell me what you think about it. Okay. So, this is in San Francisco, 1928. Underworld chief found shot to death. Gary Ferry slain in own bathroom, automatic and clothing on outside of home. So this is one of the leaders of the Black Hand is in San Francisco during this time period. People from San Francisco would be coming to Colusa. They're purchasing olive oil. They're going to these parties. I'm sure I think there is a connection here to this person. And then you have on the right, these are the top 3 most famous mafia groups, and the Black Hand is the one that we are thinking was involved possibly with Colusa. So we have like the mob boss, and then his little, he has his capos, which are like his captains. So this is like, so Gary Ferry, I would say he's a little bit more than a capo, but he's not quite the boss, but he's one of them. Okay. So if somebody was caught, I'll just read this out to you aloud. If one of their members was arrested, the machinery of the fraternity was put into play at once. The first phase of their cover-up began with pressure. First for witnesses to give false testimonies, and second for newspaper articles to influence public opinion, or at least render the accusation incomplete or equivocal. If the first phrase was not successful and the accused went to court, phase 2 began. The corridors would be filled with the friends of the accused. Jurymen and witnesses who had been persuaded were greeted with smiles and handshakes, while threatening looks were given to those who were distrusted. The entire court proceedings were orchestrated by jesters from mafia capos, leaders in charge of lesser-ranked groups. So we have a murder. This is the Ferraiuolo house. It's on 1117 Market Street. It's still there. So there's a murder that happens in front of this house on December 26, 1926. And it's existed mostly as just a rumor. Not a rumor, I would say it's more like a legend that's been just, I don't know. It's been passed down from generation to generation. And everybody kind of wonders, is that just like, is your family, are they just making that story up? Wow. You know, but so many people know it. And so I worked really hard to get access to the actual court case document. It took me about a year and hundreds of dollars, but I got it. And there's definitely things missing from there. That's a little frustrating. And I'm going to try to tell this story. It's a very complicated story. If you want to read better, you can look at my thesis, but I'll just share you the main points. Okay, so this is the Market Street property. It's in pink. The reason I have the third one on the left, I'm not sure if that was part of their original property, but I know the other side was. So imagine this is where all those extravagant parties are happening, you know, mini courses, live music, there's lights, it's dancing, it's beautiful. There used to be a barn, they had horses, they had cows, it was like a good place to be, maybe. Okay, so December 26th, 1926, Louis Ferraiuolo, he's probably about 17, I'm gonna say 17 or 19, and James Armacito, they're in charge of the music for the night. There's plenty of musicians in the family, but for some reason they want to get this phonograph. So they all pile into a Ford Touring, which I believe is that car in the background. And Victor Lucchese also joins too. I couldn't find his picture though. So we have Louis, James, and Victor Lucchese, these teenage boys. Victor's like 15 though, I believe, at this time. They're going around town. They go down to Goulard's Dairy because there's an accordion player there and they want to ask him to come play. They can't find him. So Victor's like, let's go to my dad's house and we'll take his phonograph and get some records. So they do that. So meanwhile, while these guys are getting the music together, we have Fred Ferraiuolo, which is Frank's son. He's in the picture with the ladies, the Vito ladies. And they're at church. So the younger boys are getting the music. Fred and Frank are at church, at the Catholic church, pictured here. And people are already arriving at the party at this time. Okay, so we have, not many times are available, but when I have them, I will share them with you. So we have at 4:30 p.m., Frank and Fred return home from church. Some guests have already arrived, including the Nicoletti, Lisi, Missoula, Monaco, and Vaca families. And there's a new teenager in town named Angie Monaco. She was asked by officials if any officers were present at this party, and she said no. And I'm just gonna point out that I personally find this a little bit strange that there were no officers at the Ferraiuolo party, considering they frequented them. This is a big party, but also Angie isn't going to know these people anyway. So she's the perfect person to ask. She's new. Were there any officers here? I don't know. Right? And then I also want to say a side note, I forgot to put this at the end, but, I'll come back to that. I'll save that for you guys for later. Hold on. Okay. All right, so as the hours progress, more and more people arrive. Kids are playing outside and guests are congregated in various parts of the property. Frank, Fred, James, and Pasquale, Pete, Scordino are having a conversation in the back room when through the door walks Angelo Fusaro. So the house is set up in a way, if you're in the very back of the house, you can see straight down to the front door. So Pete Scordino and Angelo Fusaro have some beef going on, and you can imagine what it would be like to see him show up at this party, you know, if you are Pete Scordino. So Pete Scordino is a native of Acri Cosenza in Calabria, Italy, so is Angelo Fusaro, and it's known for high mafia presence there. Pete Scordino is around 35 years old at this time, and I think Fusaro is like 28. So Angelo Fusaro, at least what we're able to find through the documents, owes $20 to Scordino, which is around $350 today. It doesn't seem like enough to lose your life over, but if Pete Scordino was indeed in the mafia, you don't want to owe that guy money, right? And this is not the same family as the Scordino family, just if anybody's wondering. Okay, so looking at the court documents, I was able to get some direct quotes from people there, and this is from Frank Ferraiuolo. He says, Frank imagined there was trouble, so he went outside to see the fellow Fusaro out. I ran outside and saw Fusaro sitting just got into the machine. Must have got into the machine when I got outside and went to him and told him, for God's sake, go away from here as quick as you can. A lot of other things are happening at the same time that you can read about in my thesis, but so basically, Angelo Fusaro, he gets into his car, but for some reason, as Pete Scordino goes back outside again, down the steps, Fusaro gets out of his car. Definitely the worst choice he could have ever made. So Pete Scordino brandishes his .25 caliber Colt and starts firing at Fusaro. After the first shot, Fusaro grabbed his chest and continued walking backward. He made a few steps forward and was shot 2 more times in the chest and once in each arm. Fusaro spun around and was shot 2 more times in the back. Pete kept shooting, and it was only a second until the whole cartridge and gun had been shot. Fusaro was all the time backing up. So James Armacido, I think as any normal human being would do, he gets in his car and he just starts driving away. So as soon as James Armacido saw Fusaro hit the ground, he took off by car, first to Eddie High Street service station on 6th and Market, 5 blocks away from the 11th Market Street home, and ultimately ended off at the post office 3 blocks further. We have to remember, he's a teenager, he just saw somebody get murdered, and he likely knows he's not a good guy, probably involved in some organized criminal situation. So he takes off. And at the exact moment of ceasefire, Joe Monaco, the dad of Angie Monaco, that teenager who they asked if there was any officers present, he pulls his car directly up in front of the scene. However, Frank Ferraiuolo says Scordino took off back down the alley. So both of these things can be true. I kind of have a feeling that Joe Monaco was the getaway driver, and it just happened that they just didn't coordinate well enough. So Joe Monaco pulls up to get Scordino, but Scordino is already taken off back down the alley. However, later, Pete Scordino was found hiding at Monaco's house. So it kind of tells me there's something going on. Also, Angie Monaco's grandson told me that there's always been stories of their family being in the mafia from Sicily. So if you take that information and you pair it here, it's kind of like, there's a good chance there's something more going on than just $350. So Frank told Louis to run and find the town marshal, J.R. Topman. A young fellow came up to the corner and told me that a man had been shot at the Ferraiuolo house and was lying dead in the street. 30 minutes elapsed between the time of the shooting and the arrival of authorities. The town marshal, J.R. Topman, district attorney, Harmon Albury, police officer Creighton, Hogue, and coroner J. Dieter McNary all arrived on the scene. At around this time, Armacita returned and found, besides the authorities, a crowd of people surrounding the body. And I heard that Frank Ferraiuolo stood there and made sure nobody touched the body at all, which is great. There's a lot of very peculiar things that also happen. I found the body, this is the coroner. I found the body lying toward the gutter and the head toward the railroad tracks on his back. By the way, there were also railroad tracks on Market Street.
Yeah.
On the ground, there were some pieces of candy and quite a little bit of blood. There were no weapons, just a little penknife. Inside his pockets, I found candy, just the same character of candy that was on the street there, and a blank checkbook and envelope from the clerk's office with a declaration of intention to become a citizen of the United States. And here's a picture of his intent to become a citizen. I found it in an archive, and I just think it's like a sad thing to look at because we have September 1926, and we know he's gonna die just a couple of months later, you know, finally getting his American dream. So the community is ablaze with this news, of course. So we have the Colusi Herald, 1926, man shot to death, killer surrenders. January 6, 1927, we have La Voce del Popolo in San Francisco. They're talking about the murder. Grand jury indicts Scordino for the murder of A. Fusaro. Scordino willfully, unlawfully, feloniously, and with malice aforethought killed Fusaro, indictment alleges. The grand jury today filed an indictment against Pete Scordino for murder. The indictment alleges he willfully, unlawfully, feloniously, and with malice aforethought killed one Angela Fusaro, a human being. It lists some of the witnesses here, and there's a lot of these witness testimonies are missing from the report. Like, some of them are there, but some of them are not. It's kind of strange about that. Albury introduces inquest and grand jury testimony. March 10, 1927. Dale Lucchese and Victor Lucchese, guests at the Ferraiuolo party during which the shooting took place, were on the stand this morning. The latter said that he had left by the rear door of the Ferraiuolo home when he had heard the shooting. In the alley, he met Scordino, he said. He testified that he walked to 10th Street and down 10th Street to J with him. Who shot Fusaro, Lucchese? It was testified, asked Scordino. I did, Scordino replied. Murder trial is continuing. Scordino case in Colusi goes on until next Monday. Scordino claims self-defense. Scordino told District Attorney Albury and E. Sheriff Creighton that he had shot Fusaro in self-defense. I'm sorry that I did it, but he would have killed me if I had not shot him. Scordino is said to have told his questioners. Scordino, in the sworn statement, also charged that Fusaro had drawn a knife on him and in making a swing at him, had slashed him on the palm of his hand. So I just want to remind you that Scordino is claiming self-defense, but Fusaro was shot 7 times, including twice in the back. I don't think that's exactly what you're doing. Jury acquits Pete Scordino. Verdict is read at midnight. March 15, 1927. Decision is reached after 3.5 hours deliberation. Spectators greet verdict with applause and cheers. Not guilty was the verdict of the jury last night in case of Pete Scordino, who was charged with the murder of Angela Fusaro. The jury brought in its verdict around 11 o'clock. Although the hour was late, as soon as the court bell announced that a verdict had been reached, the courtroom began to fill up. Scordino sat with his attorney. A.A. King, as the jurors filled in, grave and anxious, but not visibly nervous. As soon as the jury roll was called, Judge Ernest Wayland asked for the verdict. When it was read by the foreman, J.C. Ort, the spectators applauded heartily and some of them cheered. Scordino smiled quietly. So, I'm going to list some of the these connections we have about kind of saying that this might be a mafia situation, not just a regular murder. I want to remind you about Andrew Monaco's grandson talking about, I was part of my slide, but how he said his family talked about being from in the mafia in Sicily. And then, so we have my Uncle Mike actually interviewed Louis Ferraiuolo in 1987 and asked him about the murder of Angelo Fusaro by Pete Scordino. And so we have this on recording. I've heard it myself. And he says, oh yeah, and that Scordino got away with it too. He continued to describe another event. So we're talking about Louis Ferraiuolo, right, the Frank Ferraiuolo's son. He continued to describe another event where a man appeared at his house asking to be hidden. Louis told the man, no, I don't want anybody here, but he allowed him to stay one night. When he left, he just took off. I don't know where the hell he went. Then they finally got him to kill him. The mafia did. It was mafia. Pete Scordino was the guy that killed him. Then, unfortunately, or I don't know if I say that, but there's a few people who did not want to talk about the mafia thing with me, and so I tried to keep them anonymous. But in an interview with an anonymous participant, he said Scordino was a mafia hitman, like very clearly, was like, yep. Then I interviewed a family, and they started talking about it. They're saying like, oh, you should tell Cassie about that mafia thing, and they started talking. But then when I showed interest in it, they were like, nope, we're not talking about that. So I felt like, shoot, we're so close. I personally, I'm not really thinking the mafia is going to come get me right now, so I don't know. But Martin Scorsese, if you want to make a movie, let's get in touch. Okay. Then I interviewed Leon Lucchese. He was super helpful, and he's the nephew of Victor Lucchese, who was that 15-year-old boy that got the phonograph and the records. And he said that the Black Hand came to his family's house and threatened him and pressured them during the trial. So if we take all these things, I feel like there is more to this story. And unfortunately, a lot of government documents are missing. I'm still hoping to find them though. Like, this is not something I'm just gonna stop. I'm not done with it. And I took some quotes and I paraphrased a little bit, talking to Leon. He says, the Black Hand was tough, and maybe they had guys in the community, but the Italian community in Colusi was pretty tight. When the mafia would try to intimidate them, those original immigrant patriarchs would threaten them right back. They were tough too. So I thought that was pretty cool. So before these are just some pictures that I didn't have an opportunity to share, and I wanted to. We have, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about the purpose of, like, just one closing statement on the purpose of why we study history. So we have Vincenzo Veneri, Homer Andreotti, Pasquale Ferraro, then we have Angelo Salatino, then we have a Terracina. I feel like those two are sisters, not the same person, but they have the same name. So it says Salatino and Nicoletti. I'm not quite sure. And then on the far right, the woman on the very far right is Carmela Ferraiuolo. That's the wife of Frank Ferraiuolo, but I don't know who the other person is. So going back to how this is like an unfinished story, and there's so much more out there. There's more in my thesis, of course, but there's more I haven't even discovered yet. Every day I'm discovering new things. People are coming to me constantly. So here's one I forgot to add in here. Just the other day I was talking to a lady from the Paletta family, and she said her family went from New York, Minnesota, McLeod, Colusi. And so that's just kind of like, that's another thing that ties it together a little bit more. There's a lot of stories like that. Maybe one day, I'll make more, I'll add another chapter to update this thing. But I want to remind you guys that if we don't preserve history, and we don't write history and publish history, and if we don't protect it, it is not going to be here. It will disappear. So we have to do this or it will be gone. And once it's gone, we can never get it back. This is the best I can do with the information we have available today, but I'm sure so many of us wish we can go back in time and pay a little bit more attention to people when they told us their story. So if you have anything, I'd say write down your story right now and make a point to do some preservation work, okay? And thank you. That is all, thank you.
Cassie, you have time for a couple questions? I know there's a lot of Italian blood out here. I noticed
Okay,
that.
so,
They were asked.
I got a notepad here, so I can take some questions, and if I don't know the answer off my top of my head, I will get back to you. Yes, sir.
Thank you for your presentation. Go Wildcats. Who is your advisor at CSU?
Oh, Dr. Tinkler. You know him? Yeah, I love him. Tinkler for president. That's what I always say. Any questions? Yes.
You might have said it, but where was the factory that made the olive oil in town?
Oh, it said it was in, did it say just north of town? I'm not quite sure exactly where it was. I'd like to know that. I believe, some of the records are difficult because they could be renting the property for a lot of years, so it's like hard to see the list of renters, but we can find it. If we can find the owner, we can find it. Yes.
Yeah, my father was really good friends with Art Coletta.
Oh, really? Arthur?
Very good friends. They hunted together all the time. You know, I remember as a kid seeing, after they'd hunt, they'd come home to our house, and my dad would be snoozing on one end of the couch, and Art would be on the other end of the couch. But he used to tell stories, Art did, and I used to listen to the stories about the Black Man.
Wow.
Now, I can't remember many of them, but it's been on my mind ever since. The connections there. And this is starting to bring
The
more
memories.
of that back into the picture.
I think,
I like the people that speak to you.
oh yeah, I would love it. I would love that, yes. Thank you. Anytime, you guys, maybe somehow we can get an email out there. You guys can email me. Any other questions? Yes.
Yes, could you please repeat, who was the very first one to Colusi without going to that connection, Minnesota descent?
Oh, so like, so the very first one that, like, in general, or the first person to go through Minnesota, or no?
No, the first one in general.
I would say that is a debate between Del Papa, Ferraiuolo, and Durango, and Alto Mori. There's like, it's very
How did they
wishy-washy.
find Colusi?
You know, my thought, I know there were advertisements talking about like the agriculture in Colusa and the ability to grow plants, and I think they saw that and thought. I also know that in Minnesota, there was a connection, of course we know there's a somehow Colusa Minnesota connection, but there were Italians in California were delivering wine to the campsites in Minnesota, so I feel like that kind of also helped bring them over.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody? Yes.
Is there any kind of group or organized group of Italians that had ancestors that came here to settle this area or in Colusa?
Like that exists today,
Yeah.
present today. I think there's still Italians. I think it's a little bit less of a tight-knit community. I would really like it if we could all get back together and, you know, say like, let's have an Italian culture party at the park or something like that. That would be ideal.
You mentioned that the Scordinos weren't in relation to my old classmate, John Scortino, or Steve Scortino, but there's lots of, excuse me if I missed this, but there's lots of Pizarros around.
Yeah.
And are they related?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
We actually ran into one of them at Davidson's Drugs, and he didn't know the story.
Really?
So, yeah, maybe that's something, maybe, I don't know why. Yes, way back there.
Your efforts put this information together and share it with us with a certain amount of humor is greatly appreciated. If more people would do something like this, that just sharing history of what took place before, how we tie into what happened before, it's marvelous. I appreciate your efforts.
I appreciate you guys. You and then you, yes.
I was surprised to see the Cairo name and the Armacido name,
Mhm.
because they would become associated with here in Williams.
Yeah.
The same
Yeah.
family, I assume.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And of course, the wonderful restaurant that we no longer have, sadly. Louis Cairo would be from the Bay Area. He was always credited. By the way, his wife was an opera singer.
Oh, okay.
The beautiful, thank you. Very wonderful couple. And Jim Armacito, actually, I'm gonna mention him downstairs when we're in the museum on the tour, showing off some artifacts from him. I'll tell you the story, but I'll do it right now while everybody's present. You're not on the tour. He would open up 2 businesses in Williams. He was such a hard worker. And they were right across the street from one another, right near the location of Kairos today, or recent Kairos. And one side was a Pontiac, Pontiac car dealership, with also running the Greyhound bus station. And on the opposite side was this, what branch of Texaco, I think so. And he ran both businesses by himself. And in those days, we didn't have a freeway, so it was 99W, which was a very busy road, almost impossible to cross, even the locals to get to the drugstore.
Was he running a factory?
He was literally, he had a loudspeaker, an old-fashioned loudspeaker on the old-fashioned telephones to pick up the phone when it would ring. And when a car came into the lot of the gas station, there was a special amplification of that noise. And he literally would weave his way back and forth between the traffic to attend to both customers on both sides of the streets at the same time. He was such a hard worker.
Wow.
What did he do with all his hard-earned money? Maybe most people don't know this. He would surprise, especially elders in the community, and take them to a ball game at the San Francisco Giants.
Wow. That's really
Isn't that
nice.
a beautiful story?
Could you show that photo one more time of the neighborhood, of the Italian neighborhood?
Yes. There's 64 slides, so we're good. All the way back. There's probably an easier way to do it, but it's wrong there. And this is a rough estimate. Some of you guys are probably thinking, oh, she's wrong, that's not how it is. But I did consult a few people, so. Was there another question? Yes.
As another master's degree holder from Chico State, mine was 60 years ago.
Good job.
And what I'm hearing from people in this group, I eagerly await your second edition of this presentation.
Oh, thank you. I hope so.
You're here.
Thank you so much. What was your thesis on?
The inception of organized fire protection in the city of Chico, 1873 to 5.
Awesome. I like it. Thank you. That's awesome. Okay, do we have anybody else that would like? Yes, ma'am.
Historical question. How did the Immigration Act of 1924 affect your story? You didn't mention anything about it.
No, I don't talk about that. I have a chapter that kind of talks about this. There's definitely like a mixed, it's called like, I think the chapter's called Mixed Welcome for Italian Americans, but of course it was like other immigrants too. Basically trying to like rush people through Americanization programs and, you know, having people stop speak Italian and speak English and, you know, become American, you know. Which Del Papa was one of the leaders of that too. He was like the representative of the Italian community. Of course, now we look back and we think like Americanization isn't really necessary, right? We don't have to lose our culture to become American. We're all American. That because we're different is what makes us American. But there might be a little more of a chapter that would better answer your question. Yes, sir.
Well, there's probably a lot of people here from Williams, but I'm just going to say that if it wasn't for Jim Armacito, I would have never got to Candlestick Park and talked to Willie Mays.
Wow.
And I gotta say, Jim Armacito was amazing, but he was a dangerous driver. That car, he didn't carry all of that car as a battering ram and defied anybody to get in front. But we got out of there.
that. That's an answer. Yes?
Would you repeat your website with the story of your Italian?
Yes, so basically, if you just Google Little Italy Colusa, it should be the first link, maybe the second link, and you'll see my name. Yeah, it's easy to find it. Mm-hmm.
To address the discrimination, sadly, that was against Italians in general in the country at the time, we have an aunt married into our French Canadian clan family, a Cantabile from San Jose. Her parents had it relates directly to the Williams I'm getting to. Her parents had a grocery store there. They struggled, and she was trained in music, and her parents used to set her and her brother out on the streets to perform, to bring in a little extra, contribution to the family's coffers.
Oh, that's nice.
Anyway, she would go to college there, and when she got her teaching credential in music, she could not get a job anywhere in the San Francisco Bay Area. She searched high and low, and it's this very building, when it was the high school of Williams, that hired her. And she was a very popular music teacher here.
Oh, wow.
And she would go on to become a music teacher at Colusa High School as well. And maybe even a junior high, to my knowledge, I'm not sure about that. But she would talk about the discrimination that she experienced and was very grateful to be welcomed by the Colusa County schools.
Yeah, I've heard stories too. It's amazing. Awful.
Helen Cantabile. And she would perform with them.
That would be really wonderful to hear.
Thank you.
Thank you. Cassie, thank you for the excellent presentation. I want to present you with a one-of-a-kind, can't be purchased anywhere, wagon wheels paperweight. And as a member of the speaker.
Thank you.
Okay, very welcome.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
I'm grabbed my
So, no. All right. No, thank you. So I got interrupted the first time, so I didn't get to say what my board wanted me to say is that Gene Russell is retiring as the outstanding wagon wheels of many years. He wants to do it before he's not eligible for Social Security anymore. So he's in a hurry. So if there's anybody out there or knows anybody out there, we're thinking we're probably going to have to do it because it is a big job, maybe for 2 co-editors. And please contact us through the website, through our email addresses. And but the only other thing I wanted to say is I just am so pleased that, and I can't believe we didn't do it before with this wonderful forum here for the program. And one of the coolest things I think about here is, I'm sure a lot of you have been or went over the old Meridian Bridge. Is that correct? So raise your hand. Went over the old Meridian Bridge, and on top of it were these pinnacles. And there are 4 of them, and 2 of them are in the Colusa County Museum here, and the other 2 are in the Sutter County Museum. So I just wanted to mention that.
They're lightning rods.
It's what?
They're lightning rods.
Yes.
Okay. Lightning rods. Okay, with that, and I'm going to say thank you all very much for coming, and anybody that wants to have a tour going up around Dixie with Rand, and that's, but otherwise, our portion of the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.